Hi, you're listening to Baachu Talk, a podcast for government and professional services professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and I will be sitting down with our government leaders, outsourced business service leaders, GovTech entrepreneurs, voluntary community social enterprise leaders, independent policy think tank leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn all about their values and collective impact in our society. Today's guest is Kamel Hothi, OBE. Kamel is ranked in the top 100 most influential Black, Asian, and minority ethnic leaders in the UK by Financial Times and others, and in 2017 was awarded an OBE for services to promoting diversity in banking. After 38 years in banking, she now sits on several boards as an advisor, trustee, including the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, working across 53 countries on social change, ambassador for Alzheimer's Society, on the cultural board for Lloyds of London, and non-executive director on TLC Lions, advising over 230 FTSE companies across the globe on the well-being, inclusion, and cultural leadership behaviors, reaching over 1 million over 3 years, and brings these clients together by chairing the TLC Lions Client Club at Westminster Palace alongside United Nations Chair of Women to debate key issues faced by all. In addition to that, her passion and purpose to create a level playing field for all the people resulted in forming one of the first BAME and Women's network. This intrapreneur drive pushed her on to develop the Asian strategy, cultural training initiatives, new communications campaigns, and products for Lloyds Banking Group, as well as chairing a government task force to improve the supplier diversity ahead of the Olympic Games bid. She went on to lead the bank's award-winning 250th anniversary campaign, developed a game-changing blueprint for charity partnerships, and various CSR programs, raising a record-breaking £20 million over 6 years. Her determination to change the shape of corporate values and interaction between colleagues and communities resulted in the development of new skills volunteering strategy, attracting a collaboration of universities and the Cabinet Office. There is much more to know about Kamel, most importantly about her personal life, where she started with no access to further education and a strict Sikh upbringing, ruled by a strong dictatorial father, concluded an arranged marriage at 19. The sense of honor, respect, and responsibilities played heavy on young shoulders as a carer for her elderly in-laws, the dutiful wife with no voice. It's a common theme across the Asian households, but Kamel, so good to have you. Let's talk about all your life journey and everything about you, Kamel. Welcome to Baachu Talk.
Thank you, Bhaskar. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamel. So let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born and your high school and education?
So I was born in Punjab, in India, in northern Punjab, near Jalandhar, city of Jalandhar. Basically, my parents were the survivor of the partition of India and Pakistan. So unfortunately, mum and dad were on the wrong side of that line. So migrated from there into Punjab. Dad is a civil engineer. He built one of the biggest dams in India, the Bhakra Dam, and was recognized by Nehru himself. But I think Dad was a bit unsettled. And when, Britain reached out to the Commonwealth saying, come to Britain, he decided to come here. So we traveled here in the 60s. I was 6 at that time. I'm the youngest of 6. So we arrived here in the UK. So my education was very much starting in the UK, but it wasn't a very warm welcome, as I'm sure many of your listeners have remembered and recalled. Back in the 60s, it was quite a difficult time for anybody coming here in the UK. So I started in primary school, went on to secondary school, but after that, unfortunately, my father, which I'm sure we'll get on later, I got a quite big chip on his shoulder because he didn't really find that he could use his skill set. So most of people who were migrating like us ended up in factories, which was okay, but So he was quite bitter about it. So therefore, he didn't see the point in us going on to further education. So straight after school, I had to find a job.
Wow, Kamel, coming from a background in India where building dams to coming here working for a factory, your father might have gone a lot in his mind,
Yeah.
Relocating to a different country, finding a place to live. UK is big. Where did your family move, Kamel?
So we came to Slough, and to be honest, we've stayed here since we came. Like most families, you sort of migrated to, you flocked to people you knew. So we had some connections here already. So there was about 5 or 6 families living in one household, and we just ended up coming into them. So it was a difficult time, to be honest, as well as not being able to find a job to fit his skills. Racism was rife. It wasn't just verbal racism, it was physical racism. And being Sikhs with my brothers wearing turbans and my father, it was constant bullying, and including myself, because, there was no money. So everything was made at home. So I was bullied at school, which has stuck with me for a long time. And then Dad decided to take my brothers and himself to the barbers to cut their hair because, being a Sikh and having your turban ripped off is the worst thing that could happen. And which was a difficult message to digest at that time. And I remember very early 2 lessons I learned. One was Dad saying, when he came back, and we were so shocked because he hadn't explained he was going to do this, was, but inside we're still Sikhs, but we decided to come here, so we have to do everything we can to integrate. Even if that means keeping your head down, being subservient, just don't rock the boat because nobody would give you a chance. So that was one lesson, which is so contradicting to what we now teach in coach, people in this generation, to be yourself, be strong. It's a lesson that's unfortunately at the back of my mind has been there all the time. And the other one was my poor mum, sat there silently crying and not challenging her husband, and realized as a woman in my community, we didn't really have a voice, and she couldn't challenge her husband. So those are the 2 sort of grounding lessons that were a big part of my life for a long, long time.
Totally. I think that's very powerful, Kamel. Thank you for sharing that. Any positive memories? I mean, like any that memory that you had growing up with 4 or 5 families together, which at the moment is a privilege for many of us, but you had that collective upbringing as a family, and I'm sure there will be some happy, positive things. Anything comes to your mind?
Yeah, Bhaskar, I think when you don't have much, you make the most of it, don't you? And for me, my happiest memories, I recall in Britain that you had proper seasons. You had proper winters, when there was a lot of snow. And in the summer times, when we didn't have a TV. So most of us kids would be out on the streets, and we were one Indian family on the street of very British. But, everybody was out on the streets on their bikes. Those had bikes. But otherwise, it was like a plastic bottle, bit of water, and squirting around and playing. And for me, those happy memories of childhood where you felt safe on the streets, you didn't worry about cars, you didn't worry about, anybody violating you in any way in that sense, which I think the generations, as we've got more comfortable, but with tech, children are now very much sitting indoors on their iPhones and their iPads. It's a shame that children are growing up so fast. So for me, that was the early, it was the memories of playing in the streets with my little 2 plats and just trying to be one of them until I realized very quickly with the sharp tongue of my elder sister to get in and start learning to cook and clean. But those were the happier memories.
Totally. And I think you raised beautifully. Kids grow up very quickly, and I'm totally with you on that. So education stopped at a tender age, and you weren't able to progress far. What happened next, Kamel?
Yeah, so when I finished my O-levels, basically, Bhaskar, I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to go on to caring because I loved children, and my dream was to be some kind of doctor for children. And I remember sharing with this my father, who just, snuffed, and he said, "Don't be stupid, you're not going on to further education." And it was my brother who, above me, convinced my father and said, "Look, she's got some good O levels. Let's see if she can find a job in an office." And Dad sort of said, shook his head, and he goes, "If you want to waste your time, fine, but I don't think she will." But with his help, he started bringing loads of applications home. And that's how I got into banking and became a cashier in Slough branch. I was 16, straight out of school, straight into cashier. To be honest, it's not the job I wanted. As I said, I wanted to go into sort of like much more a hands-on job. So I was a bit sulking, but managed to get it out of 300 applications. And slowly, as I was a cashier, I could speak several languages in our community and quite fluent in them. And slowly the community started talking, and there's this little Indian girl sitting on the counter. She can now help us in our banking transactions and questions. And my queue started getting longer and longer. And slowly over time, I started enjoying it, realized I was adding value in a different way. And that's when, I could see actually I could make a career of this, or certainly they were encouraging me to invest some time and into studying further, which Dad wouldn't let me go on to studying further, but I started doing them at night time. So slowly after became an assistant manager, then I was selected as the first ever Asian bank manager in the UK. And this is about 10 years afterwards, and appointed in a branch called Walton-on-Thames, which is a very upper class white area to put somebody like me. But that's another full story in its own.
Wow, Kamel. So how was it at the age of 16 counting cash and getting this kind of independence, right? I'm sure working on your own, you have the freedom and you have the cash and you have the people and you're serving people. How was that at that age?
It's really strange because one of the things my brother committed to my father, because there was a bit of a grooming going on at that time. Unfortunately, we've heard about that now. We didn't have a title for it then. So my brother's committed to, they'd drop me off and they'd pick me up. So there's no freedom outside of the work. So as soon as I left, he'd be there waiting for me, come back home. And, I was 16, 17. So it was very much learning, preparing myself, prep school at home to get married eventually. But that's why I think the work was more like escapism for me. It was really, I could be myself, I could push. And, when I certainly became an assistant manager, I was really enjoying it. But one day I got home, I was about 18, just turned 18, and they were all getting ready, and they decided there was somebody who's been suggested for me. They went to see, I got left behind, and all of my sister-in-laws, my brothers went to see this young man. And 2 hours later, they came back and said, right, okay, on the CV, he looks great. He's an accountant, big family, very respected family, and you're getting married in 3 months' time. So just turning 19, I had an arranged marriage and literally met my husband on my wedding night, which added some more complex. So still, I'd just been in the bank about 18 months then, so I was still as a cashier then, making my way. And that transition probably was the hardest transition because I was quite protected by my family, as you can gather, especially my brothers, but very much loved. And as I was leaving my marital home, I remember my mum giving me a pep talk and saying, right, now you've got married, these are your duties. Your first duty is to care for your in-laws. Your in-laws are quite elderly. Your second duty is to be a very dutiful wife. Do not nag your husband because he might leave you or beat you up. And thirdly, do never, ever share anything outside your marital home. So don't ever, launder your dirty linen outside. And, and she reached out her hand to me, and it's those words always in my, in the palm of my hand. She goes, "You're taking my honor with you. Don't let me down." So that's what I mean at the age of 19. It's quite a lot of responsibility. And then, you're literally meeting your husband on the first night. You're meeting a brand new family you wake up to. And he also had his pep talk from his own mum and his sister-in-laws. It was a big family, and he sort of took out his chart to me on our wedding night and say, I just want you to understand, this is the family, this is my brothers, my uncles, my cousins and my nephews, and this is you down here. And my objective, he said, he got out this chart, 5 years time, I expect my first child, another 5 years time, another child. And my objective is to get us all out of poverty. And your job is to take care of the home. And even if that acts like a servant, that's how you have to behave. I think there was a fear that because I'd been brought up in the UK, that I was going to be very modern and very maybe disruptive. So they didn't really want me to carry on with my job. But the light at the end of the tunnel here, Bhaskar, I was very fortunate. I had a wonderful father-in-law who's way mature and wise beyond his years, and he didn't expect to accept a dowry. And he took me to one side and he said, Kamel, you know, if you want to carry on working, what you have to do is divide this personality of yours. So at home, you have to do all the chores that's expected of you as a daughter-in-law. If you can do that, and he said, and also I suggest you don't come back and boast about what you do at work, because that's one thing, as you know, in our community is very hierarchical. Just keep it to yourself. So that's, life became this very much, I call it a Wonder Woman persona. So, you know, when I leave my home, I turn into this very male-dominated, because it's a male-dominated industry, to act like the men in the workplace. But when I got home, it was very much voice curtailed. I didn't have an opinion. Even when I had the 2 children, it was quite tough. But I did respect my duties to look after my in-laws, and I felt that was my first point of care, really.
Wow, I think I'm sure anybody who listens to this can literally visualize, and they could literally be there with you in the journey here, Kamel. It was really, you know, I can really see through what was happening there. That was, I mean, like at the age of 16, starting a role, at the age of 18, 19, getting married, and pretty much at the age of 20, you had 2 expectations to manage during the day, before you work and after you work, 2 different stakeholders within work and also outside work. But, you know, as you rightly said, you know, your father-in-law was the light in the tunnel, and glad that you had this, which successfully made you to progress into the first Asian bank manager, fast forward to be a first Asian director as well. So talk us through the parallel words from 19 all the way to 26, and from 26 into your career, Kamel. How was balancing life and work?
I think with Dad's support, so the bank could see the potential, and but however, to become a bank manager, obviously I needed qualifications, and obviously I hadn't gone on to, you know, I hadn't got any banking exams. So I convinced them to do my banking exams by night, correspondence. So when everyone had gone to bed at home, I'd get my books out and start studying, and my father would see the light on, and he'll just sit there with me and just continues trying to encourage me. And that kept me going. And for me, as I said, work was a bit of escapism. And what I wasn't getting at home, which was that compassion, that eagerness, that support to, I think I was subconsciously taking into work. So I had this sort of like, so especially when I became the first Asian bank manager, and the customers were looking at me from top to down, you know, thinking that, what the hell? You know, who's this person? They want to speak to me, constantly not wanting to give me a chance. And, you know, no, we want to see some white guy. But that I think turned into, I call it knowing myself. I like to be liked. And certainly at home, that became one of my, I think, my weaknesses, because I'd keep on doing anything to be liked. But at work, it was like, you know, why don't they want to speak to me? And that became my resilience, I think. And that curiosity just increased over time. So from there, I started running 160 branches. And then there was a merger between Lloyds and TSB. And it was a huge shock to the system, because, you know, we were taking our call centers to India. We created some back office functions. And it was a difficult time for staff, and we started getting a lot of complaints. And that curiosity of mind was that, why this is happening. And one thing I always believe, that I don't think I have all the answers. And so that resilience, that bit of that curiosity turned into collaboration. So I would bring people from the front end, the back office, everybody together to really understand what the problems were. And so I created an initiative called Working Together Smarter. And slowly through that, we came up with some solutions, and my area started doing really well. And it was then I suppose I called him one of my heroes, Paul Baker, who was an exec of operations, saw the data, came out to see me and saw what I was doing, liked it, left me his calling card, and he went. And then a little while later, Bhaskar, the merger really bit, and my area was getting cut up and my job disappeared and I was being made redundant. And that was really, my gosh, I was so shocked that I'd been working so hard and I was so committed because I loved it. I felt I could have a voice at work, even though I couldn't see the racism. I couldn't see when people were passing me by, because all I was focused on is the job, and making whatever they gave in front of me the best I could see. And so when this happened, I remembered Paul and gave him a call, and he said, yeah, I remember you. And I goes, look, they're offering me these jobs I don't really want. Otherwise I'm leaving. And he said, look, get on a train, come to London, let's have a chat. And I was torn, because asking permission, because at the moment my area was in Slough or Oxford. Yeah, I had a little red Fiesta, but I was still able to come home. So I was curious if my in-laws would allow me to go to London. But anyway, I took the risk, went and saw him, and he said, look, I want you to roll this out right across the group. Let's come and work for operations. And I was so nervous because I'd never seen the back off engine of the bank. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But he was a great mentor, and said, look, I can help you. So that was my first jump across into director role, and working in an head office environment, which then, unfortunately, you also brought a huge ton of challenges for me as a woman of colour, one of the few in a leadership role. And then as my role was getting more senior and senior, the challenges at home even got dialed up as well, especially with my second child, which so the life at home got even more intense.
Wow. Come on. I think this is like a novel for me, and I'm sure it's for the listeners as well. When you stop, I'm like, okay, so what happened next? So when was this, Kamel? So now we are in 1990s?
Late 1990s now. 1990. So in the working environment, I think, that's when I, as my role was getting more senior and senior, and but I started understanding, we call them microaggressions, don't we? But as I said, at that time, I didn't understand what they were. But I noticed that if I was going into a meeting and I was chairing a meeting and it's full of men, that they would be quite disrespectful. Oh, come and make the tea. Even though I'm chairing the meeting, or if I say something, then they wouldn't hear it. And, John at the other end would say it 2 minutes later, oh, well done, John, that's a great idea. But, hold on a minute, I said it 20 minutes ago. So they were like little, I call them a colleague of mine, and I thought it was a great way to describe like little paper cuts. You don't notice one, but when you're constantly getting these, they start hurting, don't they? They start, and so my voice in my head, my imposter syndrome, started dialing up. I really thought I couldn't do this, that I wasn't fit for the job, that I wasn't intelligent enough. I just didn't know how to navigate them. Then I started talking to other people, and other women, and a few other ethnic minorities, and they also were saying the same thing. So that's when we set up the first ever ethnic minority network and women's network. And it was probably not a network, it was just a coffee table discussion with a few people and saying, do you feel like I do? Do people treat you like this? And so we had our first conference, and we found about 400 people out of 150,000 at this conference. And it was the first time, Bhaskar, I ever spoke there, and it was the first time I ever shared. This is now 20 odd years after working with my colleagues, ever told them that actually, guys, I've had an arranged marriage and I'm living in this very complex home. Nobody knew because I had hidden it. I was scared that they'd think I was weak or have all of these, they'd stop me getting promotion. And it was somebody there from the government who heard me speak and said, Kamel, look, we're thinking of bidding for the Olympic Games in about 10 years' time, but we know we need to improve our supply diversity. Can you chair the task force for us? To be honest, I didn't even know clue what she was talking about, but it was a voluntary role. And so I took it on board. The first couple of meetings were a total disaster, but I'm proud to say 18 months later, it's the best white paper across government, really changed the shape of how they procured contracts and became the bedrock of the Olympic Games bid. And then my company became the headline sponsor for the Games and we built the platform. But it did something else for me, Bhaskar. Outside of my bank, these people thought I was so much more senior than I was. They were hanging on every single word I was saying. It boosted my confidence. I really felt I had something more to give. But in parallel to that, at home, as I was getting more senior, as I said, with my second child, I didn't realize I was going through postnatal depression. And therefore, I was finding it really difficult. So that's what pushed me even harder at work. I wanted to make the corporate world a more compassionate place where, you could be yourself, that I could share stuff like this without fear or thinking that, I was, people were going to judge me differently. So there was that drive just pushed me harder. And when this all happened with the government bit, I was coming home and my husband was constantly complaining that access to finance was difficult and being the biggest bank, we should be ashamed that we were very British and we didn't have the products. And so I had an idea. So once again, rather than pointing fingers at the organization, I started doing a study of how big the cake was, how big the sectors were growing in the Asian community. And as yes, we were one of the biggest banks, but we were bottom of the pecking order as far as the Asian community concerned. So I shared these findings with my mentor, who was a great guy. I called him my second hero. He didn't steal my idea, but he managed to get me 20 minutes on the board to present this to the board. And they liked it, but they said, look, we haven't got the budgets to backfill your role. So in other words, in 6 months, you might lose your job. But I said, look, you haven't got the products, you haven't got the communication styles, you don't know the culture. And they goes, right, you go and design it then. And you know what, Bhaskar? I felt I wanted to do this. I felt my purpose, that purpose to create something new for both my community, but also, to be there and really help me overcome my fear of not knowing how to navigate this stuff. So I jumped across, and that's when I took on the role of the Asian Markets Director.
I think, Kamel, when the home is stable, then we could go and do bigger and better things at work or an entrepreneurship business, etc. But when you have your home was chaos, and you still manage to build that strength within yourself, and work to a certain extent, it was not as bad as it was as bad as what you went through at home, but on a different level. But it still, as you rightly said, was able to break that glass ceiling and to go and do the right thing. I think that's tough. At this age, people talk about stress. People talk about, work stress, managing home, etc. I appreciate, everybody is going through a journey, but I'm sure whoever listens to this will realize, oh my God, if Kamel went through all these things, I've done this, what I'm doing is nothing. Or at least I can break my own barrier because Kamel did it. So that's super powerful, Kamel.
Thank you.
Now the London Olympic bid is done, and you are leading the Asian markets for your bank. So let's continue the journey. And how old were your kids now, Kamel? at home?
So they're in now secondary school, so
Good.
they're doing well. Sorry, so now, of course, now then, sorry, could you repeat that question?
No, it was like, just continue your journey.
Okay. So yeah, no. So from there, I started designing the Asian strategy, and I met my third hero, this tall American Truett Tate from Citibank, who heard my speech, and he tapped me on my shoulder and said, look, come across corporate banking and let's take this globally. And once again, I was fearful. I had never worked in business banking before. But with his leadership and his support, and, I started designing my own cultural training courses. I trained up 500 execs. I worked with the products team, and we designed new products, include, in fact, the first ever Sharia compliant business account. The marketing budget, we were putting adverts on ZTV that was really aimed at my husband or people like him as entrepreneurs, but were in the afternoon. So I pulled in all the marketing budget, and we created these wonderful award ceremonies to really shine the light on these wonderful entrepreneurs that were adding value to the bottom line of the British economy, but also at the same time for my bank to raise its profile. So we designed the Asian Jewel Awards, we sponsored the Asian Women of Achievement Awards, and then over 4 years we became leaders in the market. And I loved my role, Asghar. I felt my community. I was now a spokesperson, so from 5 contacts, and I had 3,000 contacts. So I became the face of the bank, I suppose, in my community, that people trusted me, and I really enjoyed it. And of course, as I was doing more and more interviews on radio, TV, back home, people, my sister-in-laws, my mother-in-law, were witnessing to this, and yet I wouldn't share it with them. And slowly the community started phoning, oh, I saw your daughter-in-law on telly or something. And then I'd go home and Mum would say, you didn't tell me. And I go, very shyly, oh yeah, Mum, it's nothing major. But slowly she started feeling really proud, because the community were proud of what I was trying to do. Constantly always respectful of how I dressed, of how I spoke, very conscious of when I first took my husband to my first award ceremony and I was doing a keynote speak. It's the first time he ever saw me in this environment. And I know he was very, very uncomfortable when he saw me networking room full of 1,000 Asian men, but realized I could look after myself and that I really passionately believed in what we were doing. That he also then started supporting my work a bit more, understanding why I was coming home late, understanding why I had to stay away sometimes. But obviously the income that the other side was my salary, Bhaskar. Originally, I would take it out every month in cash out of my bank to the penny, put it in an envelope, bring it home and give it to my father-in-law. Wow. And even to this day, it goes into a bank account, and I've never, ever really experienced my full salary, even though what I'm doing now, which sounds crazy, but those are the I suppose the payoffs for allowing me to continue my career as I wanted. And so my mother-in-law became my biggest advocate. She loved watching me, she loved seeing me, she loved hearing the community talk about it, because in a way, as soon as I stepped home, I was still that daughter-in-law. I was caring for her, nursing her. My father-in-law passed away, both my mum and dad passed away during that period. And she lived with me until, unfortunately, she passed away 18 months ago. For 38 years, we lived together. And she was my protector against the other evil eyes or anything else in the community that were jealous, as you can say. But so the Asian strategy was doing really, really well until the 2008 banking crisis. Yes. Everything turned upside down.
Correct. Wow. And what's the name of your father-in-law and mother-in-law, Kamel?
So my father-in-law was Baba Singh Hothi, and my mother-in-law was Avtar Kaur Hothi.
Nice. I think you're blessed. You're blessed. As you rightly said, they were being brought up in their own way of life, but they saw you, and within limits, they gave you that space, which helped you to flourish and do whatever you can. You know what, there is always, as you rightly said, light inside the tunnel, but people have their own preferences, priorities. But thank you for sharing that, Kamel. So
Thank you.
2008 now. So wow. So you're still with the banking industry now, 35 plus years, still going strong. And is that point that you left the industry to do your own other passions, or were you still continuing?
So we as a bank was one of the strongest banks, was asked by the government to rescue another bank, HBOS, Halifax and Bank in Scotland, which unfortunately took us down with it. So our share price tumbled from £5 to 22p. And so we had to be rescued by the government. They then asked for a new board to be appointed. So CEO, everybody had to step down, and I was reporting to the board at that time. So as I was leaving, Truett spoke to a new CEO and said, look, you're going to have to build trust and pride with customers and colleagues. There's somebody who's done it creatively here. Maybe she can do it again for some. So I was asked to stay on. So I jumped across once again to a new division called Group Corporate Affairs to really look at, how can we build trust with customers and pride with colleagues. And it's the first time I started looking at our community investment programs, our volunteering and our charity partnerships, thinking if volunteering did that for me when I did the stuff with the government, really instilled my confidence and my pride, could that do that for my colleagues? So I ended up doing a lot of research and looking at how people, as a bank, we don't really make anything, Bhaskar. If you allow somebody to go and rescue somebody or save somebody's life, when they come back, they were much more agile thinking, much more creative and much more loyal to the brand. But I wanted it to be strategic. So I partnered up with 3 universities to track the impact of this on the bottom line. And this is when the Cabinet Office heard what I was doing. And we wrote a completely new blueprint of how to do charity partnerships. I took on my first charity partnership with Alzheimer Society. Dementia is the biggest killer globally. But rather than just shaking a bucket, I wanted to make it a partnership approach. So we looked at our policies. We looked at, we created a program called the Dementia Friends Program. And, after that with the BBC Children in Need and then Mental Health UK, and 150,000 staff were absolutely enthralled. And they were putting their hands up for me to volunteer. And I started measuring the impact of this. And I'm proud to say slowly we managed to win back trust, paid the government back. And then they said, in 2015, look, we're going to mark our anniversary, Kamel, for 250 years. Can you lead that as well? Once again, I'm not a marketeer, but I brought people together. And they said, by the way, there's still some scandal going on outside, the PPI scandal. But again, I made it about Britain. I wrote a book with the BBC historian Ruth Goodman about Britain and the role that the bank had played for 250 years. We funded a Spitfire in World War II that the staff had put their hands in their pocket to fund. And Dan Snow, the TV producer, knocked on my door and said, I understand you're marking the 250th anniversary. Do you want to dig up your Spitfire? And I said, no, it's in the Channel. He goes, no, I think it's in Somerset. A crazy, crazy petition. I went to the board and they signed it off to go and dig up the Spitfire, which was then proudly displayed in our head office. So we did a bunch of things in 2015 to mark our anniversary. And all of that, I think, really helped people feel proud of the company again. So I decided to retire in 2017, and that's when I've now got a portfolio of roles.
Wow. After how long, Kamel, was that?
38 years. 38
years with one bank or one employer.
Yeah.
Wow. Kamel, that's, I'm sure listeners will be reading it like, my God, that's great, Kamel. I think what it means is, you had the will, you had the passion, and, there were always people who came in your life at home and at work who were able to take you or show you the way. And then once you got that thing, you then showed the way for many thousands, many hundreds here. Wow, brilliant. So 2017, and from then on, you have got a lot of non-exec roles, many awards, including the OBE. Let's talk about the awards and honors first, Kamel, and then we go into the non-exec roles and other charity roles that you head on.
Yes, so when I was doing the Asian strategy, I'm so proud to say I was recognized. I had an honorary doctorate given to me. was selected as one of the top 10 by Prime Minister Gordon Brown as a top diversity consultant in the UK, and a number of other numerous awards, which I'm so proud of, as Woman of the Year and such. But in 2017 was probably the most pinnacle one, which for 2 years, I think they've been doing some research on me, and I got my OBE from Majesty the Queen for the work I've been doing on diversity and culture across the banking industry. And I must admit, when that letter came, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a joke. And going to Buckingham Palace to go and collect the award with my sons and my husband in the audience was probably the highlight, but not for me, but for them, because I don't think I've ever given myself time to reflect or be proud of anything. It was always just carrying on. And because we're brought up in this culture of being humble and never, boast about your achievements, and especially with my dad being so strict, and then with the life I'd been living personally, trying to hide a lot of this stuff most of my life at home. I never give myself permission to acknowledge anything, but it was for them. So that was probably the pinnacle. Seeing them there with quite eyes watering, seeing their mum collect the award, which was humbling. Thank you.
Kamel, you got the OBE for diversity and inclusion. In this world that we currently live in, we have lots of moments like Black Lives Matters, Asian Heritage, and so many other things. As a senior leader who advises companies and charities and businesses and government on diversity and inclusion, what do you think is diversity and inclusion means for the society and the industry and the people today?
That's a complex question, but however, so much work, so many reports, which is what I felt, from McKinsey's to EY to Deloitte's, trying to unravel this. But for me, simply, it's no longer really about whether it's about disability or whether it's about LGBT plus or whether it's about ethnic minority community. I think it's about inclusion. Everyone has a story. Everyone has their own lived experiences that they're bringing to the table. And as leaders, it's really an opportunity to really look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you know your people? Do you know how far they've come? Do you create enough psychological safe spaces for people to trust you to be themselves? So like I said, for 20 odd years in my career, I wasn't myself. I was hiding a lot. I probably wasn't as effective as I could be if it hadn't been for my heroes I talk about. So how can you as a leader take a moment in time out to instill that psychological place of trust where people step forward? But I believe that trust will only be created if you as a leader step into it first. If you are prepared to show your vulnerability and your anxieties and say, I haven't got the answers, because now I believe that leadership is no longer command and control. Sharing your vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. Expressing that I haven't got the answers and you seek that diversity of thought around that table is where those differentiating the real true leaders of this world are nowadays. The next generation, finding Bhaskar, what do they want? They want companies with purpose. They want leaders to be authentic. They want leaders to stand up and say, I don't know the answers and this is what's causing me headache. To be able to be strong enough to say that, that's a style of leaders that people are looking for this generation. So the old vanguard of command and control is being challenged. And it's time to you look in the mirror and ask yourself about your own biases. Be curious about the people that you lead and walk the talk and talk the walk. Not just tick the box and delegate it down to your HR teams, your recruitment teams or your D&I teams. You as a leader have to step into that circle for me and be curious. Be empathetic and be compassionate.
Very well said, Kamel. I think from where you come from, I think it comes natural for you But for others who have an experience, where they don't need to go through these challenges, right? It's something that they need to bring in their life to go through. And, people like you can share your stories, run courses, run coaching and stuff. It's a starting point for them to at least get a glimpse of what this means to them in the workplace. But thank you for sharing that, Kamel. That's really helpful. And I'm sure listeners will be, if they want to know more about this, I'm sure there are a few links that we can add part of the podcast that we could start to share on behalf of you, if that helps.
Thank you.
I can see that little girl who entered UK at 6, and that again, the teenager who became a cashier at 16, who got married at 19, 26, became the Asian bank manager, very first, all the way to get an OBE. That's a beautiful journey of a girl. I wish I have a question for you at the very end, but on the rapid random fire, not yet. But that's beautiful. Yes, so many other honors has always been, as you rightly said, top 100 in the BAME community, and so many other nominations, Kamel. I think that's great. The other than Alzheimer Society, let's also talk through some of your charitable associations, non-exec roles and stuff. Kamel?
Yeah, sure. So when I retired, I was really struggling to what am I going to do? But I'm very proud. So Alzheimer Society was the charity. They asked me to stay on as an ambassador. And the reason I have had an uncle who passed away from Alzheimer's, and we didn't even recognize it, didn't know about it. And in our community, a lot ethnic minority, we don't talk about mental health, as I said in my story, but also dementia. We don't even have a name for it. So I'm keen for the charity to reach out to the ethnic minority communities, to really educate them, especially across India. They've got a young population, and we're living longer now. So it's helping companies understand how dementia is going to impact their colleagues, especially if you're caring for somebody, but also if you start getting the beginnings of dementia, because there's no cure at the moment. And the other one is the Queen's Commonwealth Trust Fund. I'm a special advisor to Her Majesty the Queen. This is a foundation set up about 3 years ago. Her Majesty every 10 years creates a foundation, and she sees this as a final one. She wants to market for the youth of the Commonwealth. She wants them to take the lead in their own countries. So we provide funding, we provide mentoring, we provide toolkits. And so my job is to say, how can things, if it works in India, can it work in Africa and so forth? I'm very, very humbled to be supporting Her Majesty Queen. Our president was Prince Harry, but obviously there's certain issues at the moment. We'll see who that will be. But, I do pinch myself when I was there in Buckingham Palace having these meetings, and so that's the nice side of it. But it's such a great cause, and seeing these young people have an opportunity. And then there's a few other charities like Mamusi in Africa, where we build schools in very remote villages from end to end. And I've supported a number of other charities that I do purely as an advisor. But the other one as a non-exec is a company called TLC Lions, which I met the young man. He used to work for PwC and Deutsche Bank, and unfortunately in 2015 his father was murdered in India, and so he saw the reactions of his colleagues in PwC, some good and some not so, so wanted to set up this company to awaken emotion in the workplace, and somebody suggested that he should speak to me. But I liked his vision so much, I became his non-exec from that day onwards. And I'm proud to say 3 years later, we're supporting about 250 companies now on inclusion, well-being, and cultural leadership through storytelling. I've traveled, Mumbai, Delhi, Dubai, Paris, talking as well myself on these key issues that were really close to my heart. So really proud of that company, how far we've come.
Perfect, Kamel, perfect. So, it looks like you're much more busier after you retired than you were.
Yeah, probably am.
That's great. Kamel, we will be accelerating from now. And before we get into what we call the rapid random fire questions round and gratitude and other rounds, Kamel, I know you already shared a lot of things. Is there any 3 things that you would like to share to listeners that not many people know about you, other than the stuff that you already have shared?
I think just finishing off, first of all, I'm still there in my marital home. Got 4 generations living in there. My sons are married now to beautiful daughter-in-laws. I'm a grandmother to 4 lovely grandchildren under the age of 3 twin boys. And I really desperately want my daughter-in-laws to pursue their careers, you know, whatever shape that might be. But also want my sons to be different, not different, but understanding the role of a husband in this day and age is different to where their father might have been. And I do wish our community to acknowledge that actually as women, we have got so much to contribute and can contribute. But at the same time, I think this needs to be in parallel to your personal life. You can't divide one from the other. So it's making sure that your parallel life with your, you know, what would that be? You know, make sure that you do look into where do you want to get to? What's your, you know, do you want children? Do you want marriage? All of that stuff, I think is so important. So I'm still there, as I said, you know, so for me, that is just as much proud of what I've achieved there than I have my career. So yeah, so for me, it's encouraging people to really know yourself. Take time to really look in the mirror and ask those difficult questions of yourself. What is your legacy? What do you want to leave behind? And that's what drives me constantly, is to be the best I can be, to be as compassionate as I can be, and constantly learning from young people so I can stay relevant to the next generation.
Wow, totally, Kamel, totally. So looks like we have touched most of your parts now. So outside this, Kamel, any hobbies and interests?
Oh gosh, I love sketching and painting. I wish I could do that more often. I used to love it. Did the A-level art. Really, really enjoyed that. So it's one thing, hobby, that once I start doing it though, I get so engrossed in it. So I do enjoy that. Obviously reading, I enjoy reading, but I haven't read too much now. I just get so busy. But the key one is playing with my grandchildren. It just makes me forget everything. I'm so blessed when I have those moments with them.
Totally, Kamel, totally. Pretty much the serious talk is over, Kamel. Now we are entering. Now we're entering random questions. It's anything and anything. Don't think too much. Whatever comes in your mind, Kamel, just go for it. Okay. So, if Hollywood or Bollywood makes your life history as a movie, Kamel, what do you think should be the name of your movie, and who do you think should play the lead role as Kamel Hothi?
Oh my God. Okay. I think I'm going to call it The Strength Within. And who to play me? Do you know what? I think that's one thing. I mean, not that she's too good looking for me, but I love Abhishek's wife.
Aishwarya Rai?
Yeah, because I've seen her in a couple of movies where she's played the role of the woman in here in the UK who's prisoned for killing her husband, and I loved her in that role. So I think she has the compassion to do something.
Definitely.
But she's too beautiful, and that's my ego getting in there. Not that I look anything like her.
Come and forget about it. You know, but she might be prettier in her own terms, but you are much more beautiful for us than Aishwarya Rai. Believe it. She did go through what you went through. You know, I mean, like it will be a privilege for her to play your role. Let's put that way. So nice. So, what's the one food you could never bring yourself to eat?
Oh gosh, I can't stand mussels or oysters. Anything slimy. Oh gosh, I would reach.
Got it. If you could be a male or female sports star, who would you be?
Female or male sports star. Do you know what? Forgive me if I've got. I love gymnastics, and there was that young Russian girl going back many Olympians ago, but I admired her so much. That's what I've always dreamt of, being a gymnastic, you know, not that I could do anything, but she just really inspired me. She was just amazing. But also the Paralympic, the swimmer, I think she's just, her her enthusiasm, her passion for life is also just incredible.
Nice, nice. Who would win a fight between Spider-Man and Batman?
Who would win the fight?
Oh,
well, it had to Spider-Man and Batman. Oh gosh, I think it'd have to be Batman.
Right. You should maybe double check that with your grandchildren just in case. But
I know. They probably go for the Spider-Man, but I think because I feel for him, he hasn't got all that family stuff and that complex nature of in his back of his head of the Batman. I love his relationship with his creator at home, so maybe that's why.
Perfect. If you could meet anyone from history, who would you meet and why?
Anyone from history? Do you know, I'd love to have a conversation with Dr. King in how did he galvanize everybody, but in that peaceful protest? Because people want to demonstrate, but it always turns violent. And, you know, I'd love to ask him that question. I'd also would have loved to have met, this is getting a bit religious, but Guru Nanak, which is the founder of our Sikh religion. More so because, you know, he left his family and traveled the world for the hunger for knowledge and thirst. Is how do you balance your responsibility with your family to a purpose? That just, you know, I'm constantly always rappling that in my head. So, yeah.
Definitely. I think at this point, I need to share this. During my university days, I came in 2003 here to do my master's in Imperial College, and my close friend Raj Brinda was from Jalandhar. So because we didn't have much money, so every Friday we used to get the Oyster card from our other classmates, and we used to skip the 1 o'clock lecture, and we go to Southall to visit the Sikh temple and eat at the they do serve the food, right?
Yes, langar.
And that's that's what kept us going week by week. So the only day that we used to be waiting for is on a Friday, but fast forward, life moves on. But I never, that spirit of Sikh community, even now, with what's happening in India, with the farmers' protest and other things, the inherent strength that you have, it's in your blood, Kamel. I have to say that, because I've seen many of my friends, Sikh friends, I think the challenges that they go through, there is something within them that pushes them to do things. I think it could be, I might be wrong, but it's just my perception that, faith-wise, they are much more stronger in breaking the barriers than any other. And, it just something that suddenly came to my mind.
That's very kind of you, because one of the couple of there's so many values, but one of the values that I really cherish is this thing that we're all equal. And Guru Nanak started with, ek, one. What an incredible, that word describes everything for us. We are one human race. We are one united, regardless of color, creed, caste. And especially Guru Gobind Singh, our 10th Guru, he stood up for equality, not for our faith, but somebody else's faith, Hindu faith. And so it's standing up for those who are not able to stand up for themselves, but also to be able to combine. And Guru Nanak, he's, seva was a thing, food, feeding the hungry. And so that some of the philosophies and some of the values are so enriching, and actually equality as a woman, you could be equal to man. So one of the first religions, not that we practice it, unfortunately, when it comes to culture, but certainly in our religion we do. And but like most religion, there will be those handful of people who will twist what's within it, like anything else, to do their own. And but how the values of our Sikhi, especially my father, which in some sense he was so true. We have no option but to succeed. We haven't got an option, and we are blessed. Constantly remember that we are blessed, and that's what I try to do.
100%, Kamel, 100%. Nicely said. Kamel, if you are stranded in a deserted island, what three things would you take with you?
What three things? I'd love to be able to read if I can. So if I've got some gadget that allows me to read books and absorb, that'd be wonderful. Some paintbrushes and some paint to be able to just relax and watch, and some gadget to have FaceTime with my grandchildren. I'm on my own.
It's all gadgets in a deserted island. That's going to keep you going. Good luck to you, Kamel. Good luck to you. So that's good. Yeah. Kamel, what song do you sing only when you're alone, and what memory does it bring back to you?
Well, there's two actually, if you don't mind. So one is, they're both Elvis songs actually. So one is called Bridge Over Troubled Water that he sang. I love that song and I love the meanings behind it. When you have the whole theme about a bridge and the water underneath is so troubled. So I sing that to myself when I need to cheer myself up or just to push myself. And the other one is In the Ghetto, which he sang as well. And I used to sing that to my children when they were very, very young, when things were very dark at home and we were struggling, was for them to appreciate actually there are some children who are still out there who are even in a worse situation than them. So I used to sing that to them. Fast forward 38 years or 30 odd years later, my son, last year, he bought me a beautiful frame. So they had the song sketched out into a golden frame for me, I didn't even thought that they remembered. And he said, I do remember. Underneath, he said, Mum, I remember you singing this to me, and it means a lot to this day. So.
Perfect. Would you like to sing that song to the listeners, Kamel?
Oh, no. That's one thing I don't think your listeners would like to hear my voice. Thank you very much. But I'm sure if you go into Google and put in Elvis, it'd be much better. That's one thing I'm not very good at all is singing.
Don't worry. I think, at the end of the day, it's if your loved ones enjoyed it, especially your children, and they brought it that one. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So if you were a cake, which cake would you be?
A cake? Oh, gosh, cake. I'd be a carrot cake because it's healthy, thought of. It's made of carrots, but it's filling more than a Victoria sponge or anything else. So you feel like you've had something sweet, a bit more filling. But it has the naughty top, so it has an icing that is, which is a bit fun with little carrots. So there's some fun in it. It's healthy and it's filling. That's what I like to be.
Perfect. Kamel, suits you. Kamel, do you have a memorable kitchen fail?
Do I have a memorable
kitchen fail? Something went wrong while you're cooking?
Oh my God, every day, I think. Memorable kitchen fail. Let me think. Well, I think the one is I'm terrible at multitasking. Well, not terrible. I do too much multitasking. So I'm trying to cook, I'm trying to clean, I'm trying to do several things. And it's, you take so much time. It's a lamb stew. I was doing a lamb curry and I put it on tiny, I thought I had put it on a pressure cooker, on a tiny pressure cooker, and I'd forgotten, and the whole thing just erupted in the kitchen, which had taken me hours to clean. So that's for my worst.
Nice. What's one thing from the modern convenience you could not live without?
One convenience. It's something I hate, but I think I can't live without. It's my iPhone. It just helps you stay connected, helps you stay, in touch with, whether it be social media, which, as I said, it is a devil in its own right, but at least you can keep track and talk to people. So I'll probably be iPhone.
Perfect. Have you ever sent a text message to a wrong person?
Oh, yes. gosh, yeah, heart stops, bang your head against a brick wall, then trying to calm down, trying to recall it, doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, then just facing into the music and apologizing.
Yes, nice. Kamel, I think we already talked a lot about few people in your life and career, but is there any other people who you would like to talk about, the people who are most influential in your life and career? You haven't mentioned your husband though, or your children.
Yeah, so my husband and I, married for 38 years, and we both, I suppose, he still has that 5-year plan that we had on our wedding night. He still has it now, and he's so brilliant at it. He's much more pragmatic, and he has achieved his ambitions, which I'm so proud of him, for the company and the family. And he's transgendered on the sense of, allowed me to pursue my career, and trusted me in that sense. So I'm always forever grateful for him when he saw that. And he is now also learning how to let go. So slowly passing the business batons over to his sons, which is not easy in our community when you have a company. But the children and the boys, I'm so proud of them. The sons have stepped up. My elder son's an architect and develops a company on the outside of we have a property company. The younger one is an accountant, so he's all on the internal stuff. I'm so proud of how they've picked up the baton, pushing the company to new heights, and so proud of how they're turning into be husbands and fathers as well. So both of them got 2 sons each, and I watched them and delighted for them that they have their challenges. We all do, and trying to balance work-life balance, children, young fathers. So they have got huge challenges, but I'm so proud of how I hope the foundations that we have built for what they've seen, that those lessons that they're taking for their own children in their own relationships. And the next step for us, my husband and I, would be an unknown now. So a new chapter as the sons take over and become the leaders in decision making, and we don't need to be there as much. So so our new chapter is reconnecting ourselves as a husband and wife, which we haven't had for many years, because we've been so busy in managing the family, supporting the extended family who are still there. So that will be a challenge for us, is taking time out for ourselves going forward. So I'm so grateful for the ups and downs we've had. We've got through it, but we've still got challenges, and we're still trying to get through it.
Perfect, Kamel. Kamel, what advice would you give a BAME aspirant who's wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Well, first of all, I think it's just, rather than copying somebody new, is ask yourself, what drives you? What makes you passionate? Because when you can find that, then you will be more successful in whatever you do. And that is the hardest question, though. What is it that makes you tick? What is it that makes you want to get up in the morning? So to really know yourself, that's number one. And number two is have a goal. Set yourself pragmatic goals, some long ones, some medium ones, and some short ones. I'm sure this is something that, you do that work and school and so forth. But actually underneath it is also map out your personal life. Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years' time? Now, it might not be that you know what role you want to play or what salary you want or what company you want to work for. Whatever it is that drives you, put it on that map. So at least you can see where you are against those parameters and those goals. But starting from the beginning is find your passion, find your purpose, and find your voice. Your diversity of thought is what's needed in today's age in the companies. Your curiosity and your hunger for continuous improvement, that curious nature is what people are looking for. So be curious, be challenging, but also be pragmatic. And then finally, be prepared to listen. Be prepared to be quiet and listen and ask the questions in order to understand. And please put your egos to one side.
Mm.
Everybody has a story. You don't know how far they've come.
Mm.
The more empathetic you can be, the more you'll be a better leader as you grow up.
Wow. Well said, Kamel. Well said. Super powerful. Kamel, I just want you to go back to the day that you got married, right?
Yes.
And then your husband opened up a chart and then told you, there we go. These are the people who will be living alongside us. Do you have that memory of who lived with you? Because people think joint family means if a husband, wife, 2 children live together, that's a great joint family these days, right? Let alone you have extended family, etc. I just revisit that. So to just give people a view of on that day when you got married at age 19, when was this? 1970s something?
9, yeah. So
yeah, go through that. How many people?
Well,
total?
first of all, I think I need to just take a pause, step back. So that 19, as I said, I met him on our first night. I'm not going to get personal, but all I was taught is all what I knew was watching Bollywood films. So I really thought that my husband was going to start singing Gubby Gubby to me, which is the famous Indian song, serenading to me as his bride. But instead, my sweet husband Swaran gets out this chart and starts telling me, look, this. And so in my family, you know, I've got my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, I've got 2 brother-in-laws, I've got their wives, I've got their children. So literally we have 4 families living in one household.
Got it. And you know what? They did give you a warning shot, right? He's an accountant. So obviously he's numbers. Expecting him to come and sing Kabhi Kabhi. That's good.
Yeah.
But still he kept your life Kabhi Kabhi. I think Kabhi, what's this Kabhi Kabhi stands for again, Kamel? It stands for something positive. Love?
Kabhi Kabhi means sometimes.
Yeah, good. See, sometimes 20, 40 years down the line, you still Kabhi
You
Kabhi.
meet somebody that, So, I'm still waiting for him to sing it to me, but one day maybe.
Next time when I see you face to face, I will ask.
So certainly for home, it was the values of our home. When we talk about extended families, there is nothing you could say that this is yours and that's mine. It's all one. I didn't used to say, when people used to say, how many children have you got? I really hesitated and I would stumble. I feel embarrassed if I said I've got 2 children, because mentally and emotionally I felt I had 6, which were mine 2, my sister-in-law's 2, my other sister-in-law, so 6 children. And whenever I went anywhere, wherever I go, all 6, you could not say I'm just taking mine. It would be all 6. It would be all united. And in fact, we didn't go on to our first ever holiday for 15 years.
Wow.
So financially we can afford it, but that's not the key point. It was actually, how do you go away? How do you decide I'm just taking my children? So when we say in our culture, we have the word for it, it's called kat. It means the soup of a family where everything is all about the family. And so, you know, it's not about I'm doing it for my husband. It's I'm making food. It's for everybody. I'm doing the cleaning. It's everybody's. I'm doing the ironing. It's everybody's. So now you can see the pressures building up. It's, you know, and unfortunately where it slightly goes wrong is where maybe other people have the rule and divide issue of, you know, because I'm the youngest, my children also then get under the, you know, if there's only one drink on the table, you'll only go to one child, and because they're the young, they'll never get that shit. So there are some downsides, but that's more because of people rather than the actual setup. The foundation actually is a great way to collectively build and prosper. Collectively, you know, my mother-in-law, you know, she didn't have to pay for carers. She didn't have to worry about bills. She didn't have to worry about where the food was coming from, because we were always there looking after her. But on the other hand, also, I have to acknowledge, whether I liked it or not, whether, you know, that's another story, but they were caring for my children while I was at work.
So fast forward now today, 2021, May, your joint family now, how does it look?
So my joint family, I'm trying to be a modern mother-in-law.
Yes.
Which so when mum was still alive, my mother-in-law, it was quite difficult because she had a say over my daughter-in-laws, which was quite hard, and I had to start coaxing her and say, Mum, you know, they can't have two mother-in-laws. So now she's passed away. Where are we now? So I'm trying to give them the freedom to explore their, as I said, their own jobs. And when my younger daughter-in-law was pregnant second time round, we were, as I said, very blessed with having children very quickly. So my oldest son got married 6 years ago, the other one married 3 years ago, and to have 4 grandchildren in one household, I could foresee that this could be difficult and challenging because, you know, even though it's a beautiful home that India built and designed, and so my youngest couple, we moved them out into a home about 10 minutes away to allow, because I felt the sons were working together, and what you don't want to do is risk the business. So they have their independence, but they're still working together. And so the sister, the daughter-in-laws, I'm so proud, they get on so well. But one thing, we've got to have some values that we've asked them, which is not to fight ever over money. And if you want to change anything to the structure of the family, then we all sit around and we discuss it.
Nice.
And that if any one of us upsets each other, you can go to somebody else in the household. If I'm irritating you, you can go to your father-in-law. If we're both irritating, you've got your brother-in-laws, you've got your sister-in-laws. Is to have that support structure within us, so you can talk. And if that fails, yes, then go back to your parents. But one thing I said to my daughter's parents before the marriage, during the marriage, that we as relations have to be much tighter than even our own siblings, because we've got an invested interest. Our children are married together. And so we have to have an invested interest. So if there is some feedback that, you know, your daughter is struggling or something's not quite right, you have a duty of care to reach out to me and have a discussion with me, because I'm learning. It's the first time I've become a mother-in-law. So I've tried to be as open and understanding and accept that I haven't got all the answers, accept I will make mistakes, accept I come from a generation and lived through a generation that is so totally different to these young girls now, that there's no way I know my daughter-in-laws would want to live how I've lived. So they might admire me in my corporate world, but I know they do not want to live my life as the daughter-in-law I have been, which I accept. So I'm trying to liberate. I know the word mother-in-law is so toxic in our community, because stop this control and command and control role that cannot work anymore. If we want our children and we want relationship with our daughter-in-laws and our children, we need to adapt. We need to let go. We need to understand. However, I hope the next generation also appreciates the wisdom, the guidance, because there's nothing more powerful than having been there, worn the t-shirt, gone through the traumas yourself, and come out the other end and say, I know the mistakes I made, please don't make them like this. So I hope there's a bit of understanding of both parties in order that we can prosper, can continue to have this deep foundation of family, and what family actually means for us.
Beautifully said, Kamel, beautifully said. Kamel, we are at the last minute or two. I know, very, very busy life. You know, even in all the challenges that you went through, you still created your own space and you managed to inspire so many people. What are you looking forward to in the future?
If I'm blessed with age, I'd love to see how my grandchildren are flourishing. I said to my sons and my daughter, the biggest challenge you have is helping them understand and appreciate value for money, because they will not, you know, so I'd love to watch them grow and be there for them as much as I can be and allowed to be. I do want to reconnect with my husband and enjoy the fruits of our labor, because we haven't been. I've got so many things in my bucket list that I want to explore, and I haven't been to Rome. I want to see that. I haven't done the Gurdwaras in India. I want to see them. I want to go and walk on the Great Wall of China. So there's lots of stuff I'd love to explore in the future, and I hope I can manage my anxiety a bit better as we progress, and not to be too worried. There's only so much I can do, and forgive myself for the mistakes I've made in the past.
Wow, 100%, Kamel. What are you talking about? I mean, this will be a rewind listening for many people. I can tell you, don't even think about that. Like, you made it sound so simple, but I think everyone who's going to listen to this episode will be with you in this journey of what you went through. That's brilliant. How was it working from home in this COVID crisis, Kamel? I mean,
it has been challenging, because all my life I've been traveling into London and all over, so I'm not used to staying at home. And with my mother-in-law passing away, there was another quietness with my younger son and couple moving out. The house is so quiet from the house that I'm used to. It has taken some time. It has taken toll on my own anxiety, I must admit. So I do now try to set boundaries. So that I take time to walk when I'm feeling anxious. I try to recognize my own trigger points. So when I'm taking twice as long a reading emails and just pondering on them, I know that I need to just take time out, 5 minutes even, just look out the window, go walk in the garden, or go and get a glass of water. So I'm trying to set really clear boundaries. So, this is now, I've done my bit. I'm going to do cooking or whatever. I love gardening. So the weekends I do as much as I can without trying to turn on too many emails. I give myself time to check out a bit.
Perfect. So that's it. So Kamel, don't be too harsh on yourself. Just do what you can. And while reflecting back, it's been an absolute privilege to have you with us at Baachu Talk. Wish you, your family, your loved ones, and everybody whom you touch all the good health and happiness. Please do continue, inspire everybody around you. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, few months, I'll be able to see you face to face. Until then, continue to stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and keep smiling. Kamel,
thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
When I meet Aishwarya Roy next time, I'll tell her you have to work on a movie.
Okay.
Thank you, Kamel. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit baachu.com/Baachu Talk podcast to this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk podcast with your loved ones. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundram from Baachu signing off.